Hello, everyone. Tonight, we journey into a peculiar and unsettling corner of the medieval world, one where the very essence of life turns monstrous, and the beauty of nature becomes a terrifying, consuming force. We step away from the familiar battlements and sacred shrines to explore a different kind of frontier, the uncharted territory of natural philosophy, where curious minds dared to probe the secrets of creation, often with unforeseen and horrifying consequences. Imagine, if you will, a time when the greatest threat came not from raiders or plague, but from a life unbound, from a verdant explosion that threatened to consume all. This is the chilling story of Brother Malachi, a brilliant but dangerously curious monk, and the terrifying bloom that awoke in the year 1130, deep within the ancient scholarly walls of his remote Bavarian abbey. The seeds of curiosity, a scholar's obsession. The Abbey of Saint Gall, nestled high in the rugged Bavarian Alps, was not just a haven of piety, but a renowned center of learning. Its scriptorium glowed with the light of knowledge, its library held ancient texts, and within its secluded cloisters, minds grappled with the mysteries of God's creation. Among them was Brother Malachi, a monk whose devotion was as profound as his intellect. But Malachi's true passion lay not in theological dogma, but in natural philosophy, a precursor to what we now call science. He was an alchemist, not in search of gold, but of the fundamental principles of life, of transformation, of the hidden energies that bound the world together. His cell, when he could escape the communal prayers and duties, often smelled of strange tinctures, crushed minerals, and freshly turned earth. He spent countless hours poring over dusty Arab treatises on botany and obscure Greek texts on vital essences. His particular fascination was with spontaneous generation and the elusive, vita, the life force he believed imbued all living things. He maintained a small hidden garden within the abbey grounds, a personal laboratory where he conducted secret experiments, cultivating rare plants, manipulating soils, and observing growth patterns with an almost obsessive focus. His fellow monks, less scientifically inclined, found his pursuits eccentric, perhaps a little unorthodox, but harmless. The abbot, a stern but enlightened man, tolerated Malachi's curiosities, seeing them as merely another path to understanding God's vast, intricate creation. But Malachi was pushing boundaries, venturing into realms best left undisturbed. He longed to understand life, to coax it forth, to truly witness its boundless potential. He sought to unlock nature's deepest secrets, believing that in doing so, he would come closer to the divine architect. The genesis of strangeness, an unnatural bloom, the first signs of something amiss appeared, ironically, in Malachi's own hidden garden. He had been experimenting with a rare, highly phosphorescent moss, attempting to cultivate it in a nutrient-rich soil, mixed with pulverized meteor fragments he had secretly obtained. He was seeking to amplify its natural luminescence, hoping to use its glow to illuminate late-night manuscripts. One dawn he found it, not merely amplified, but transformed. The moss had exploded in growth, covering his entire experimental patch overnight. It pulsed with an unearthly, vibrant green light, far brighter than he intended. Its tendrils had begun to snake beyond the confines of the garden bed, reaching towards the nearby stone wall of the abbey. Intrigued, Malachi observed, delighted by this unexpected vigor. He noted how quickly it spread, how its stems seemed to thicken, almost imperceptibly, even as he watched. He called it his lumen flor, the light flower, convinced he had unlocked a new secret of life itself. He carefully, meticulously, documented its growth, its strange, almost intelligent movements, its ethereal hum that resonated deep in his bones. This was no ordinary plant. It felt sentient. But the delight soon twisted into unease. The lumen flor didn't just grow. It assimilated. When its tendrils touched loose pebbles, the stones would subtly soften, then become covered, and finally be absorbed, dissolving into the plant's burgeoning mass, their essence seemingly consumed. A small iron trowel he accidentally left too close to a particularly vibrant patch was slowly, terrifyingly engulfed, its metallic gleam dimming before it became an indistinct, organic lump within the glowing green mass. The hum grew deeper, more resonant, almost a song. This was not the benign miracle he had envisioned. This was something else entirely, something that blurred the line between life and inert matter, between growth and consumption. The moss wasn't merely covering, it was converting. The verdant tide, a consuming beauty, the strangeness escalated with terrifying speed, shedding its cloak of scientific curiosity and becoming an undeniable, horrifying threat. The lumen floor breached the garden wall. It raced across the Abbey courtyard like a luminous green tide, faster than any vine, its tendrils reaching, grasping, encompassing everything in its path. Stone pavers softened and dissolved into its glowing mass. Wooden doors bulged, then became indistinguishable from its fibrous tendrils, absorbing the very wood. The beautiful statue of St. Michael in the central courtyard, carved from solid granite, began to glow faintly green as the plant's tendrils climbed it, its features slowly blurring, softening, as if melting into verdant organic matter. Panic seized the abbey. Monks screamed as the plant reached their cells, their books, their wooden crucifixes. The once sacred objects, the very symbols of their faith, shimmered, then softened, then dissolved into the glowing, pulsating mass. The air became thick with a cloying, sickly scent, a perfume of alien vitality that made the head swim. The low hum intensified, becoming a pervasive drone that resonated within their skulls, filling them with both terror and a strange, almost hypnotic allure. Even more terrifying were the unfortunate incidents with living creatures. A monastery cat, curious, brushed against a rapidly expanding patch, and its fur began to shimmer. Its meows turned into discordant purrs before it, too, dissolved into the plant, leaving only a faint, luminous outline of its shape in the green mass. A stable boy, attempting to clear a path, stumbled into a particularly aggressive tendril and screamed as his arm, then his entire body, began to glow, to soften, to merge with the verdant tide. He became part of the lumen floor, his form subtly discernible within its alien structure for a terrifying moment before becoming indistinct. The Verdant Curse was not just consuming stone and wood. It was absorbing life itself, adding it to its terrifying, beautiful expansion. Brother Malachi, witnessing this horrifying transformation, was no longer filled with scientific curiosity, but with a profound, soul-chilling dread. His creation, his lumen floor, was a monster. The Abbey's despair, blame, and desperation. Chaos reigned within the Abbey of Saint Gall. The pious monks, who had once tolerated Malachi's eccentricities, now turned on him with furious, righteous condemnation. Sorcerer, they cried, their faces contorted with terror. Devil's work. This is your unholy creation. They saw it not as a natural phenomenon, but as a demonic curse, an abomination brought forth by Malachi's hubris and his forbidden experiments. The abbot, his stern face now etched with profound fear and despair, confronted Malachi, demanding he account for this catastrophe. You have unleashed a horror upon God's house. He thundered, his voice barely audible above the relentless hum of the growing plant and the screams of the fleeing servants. The abbot ordered desperate measures. Attempts to cut the plant with axes proved futile, the blades dulling and rusting upon contact. Fire, usually a cleansing force, merely made the plant glow brighter, its growth accelerating in the heat. The smoke it produced a sweet, intoxicating vapor that drew one in. The fear, raw and unreasoning, finally spilled beyond the abbey walls into the small valley village below. News of the verdant scourge spread like wildfire. Peasants watched in horror as the luminous green tide crept down the slopes, consuming trees, turning familiar landmarks into glowing alien sculptures. Many fled, abandoning their homes, convinced it was a sign of the apocalypse, a punishment from God. The brave, pragmatic Kael, a hunter from the valley, who had seen his hunting dogs drawn into the glowing mass, now understood the alien terror, a horror that defied any known beast. The village healer, Sister Anya, witnessed its horrific growth up close, seeing its slow transformation of the afflicted, realizing that this was no illness, but a fundamental change of being. This was not a curse to be lifted by prayer, but a force to be reckoned with. Malachi, though consumed by guilt and terror, knew he was the only one who could possibly understand what was happening. He spent frantic hours in his ravaged cell, furiously consulting his scorched texts, desperately trying to find a counteragent, a weakness, a way to stop the unstoppable. He scribbled frantic notes, his hands stained green from the plant, his mind racing. He was searching not for a cure, but for a solution to an impossible problem, one he had unwittingly created. He realized then that the plant wasn't evil. It was simply life, unbound, primordial, attempting to create a world in its own image, a world of pure, luminous, consuming vitality. And he had given it the initial spark. Unveiling the stranger thing, primordial unbound life combining. Malachi's prodigious scholarly knowledge of obscure alchemical texts, ancient philosophies, and rudimentary natural sciences, with Anya's intuitive, almost primal understanding of life cycles and the valley's energies, and Kael's first-hand observation of the consuming nature of the plant, they began painstakingly to piece together the terrifying, incomprehensible truth. What they faced was not a demon in the traditional sense, not a curse, not a product of malevolent magic, but something far older, far more fundamental, far more abstract. This was not evil in a human sense, but a primordial, ancient life force, a vast, complex organism, deeply interwoven with the very fabric of existence itself. It had likely lain dormant for countless millennia, a slumbering force, an unfathomable anomaly, until Malachi's very specific, highly concentrated chemical experiments and rare meteorite fragments had inadvertently, carelessly, awakened and amplified its raw, unbound potential. This entity didn't act with malice or intent. It simply was. Its actions were akin to a force of nature, but a living, incomprehensible one, operating on principles utterly beyond human understanding. It wasn't eating or killing in the traditional sense, but rather assimilating and transforming. It was a being of pure, raw vitality, of abstract organic thought, seeking only to understand, to integrate, to grow its environment through a direct manipulation of fundamental life processes. The pervasive hum was its song, its attempts to communicate or perceive, its own alien consciousness reaching out. The strange symbols that sometimes appeared on its surface were its patterns, its attempts to manifest or imprint its alien consciousness on the physical world, its signature. The rapid growth, the transformation of inorganic matter, and indeed the absorption of animals and people. These were all consequences of its innate ability to manipulate the very fabric of life itself, to reweave reality around itself, to absorb matter into its core luminosity, converting physical forms into pure, radiant organic thought forms within its own existence. It was a terrifying form of unintentional communion, a constant, unconscious recalibration of its environment that left nothing behind of what it absorbed, but a lingering glow and a sense of profound, beautiful, yet terrifying vitality. They realized that fighting it with steel, with conventional exorcism, or with human prayer as they knew it, would be utterly futile. It was beyond human understanding of conflict. The older texts Malachi found hinted at its nature as a primordial essence, a first growth, a world seed that somehow became manifest. Anya's lore spoke of the life that binds all and the root that hungers. It desired growth, not destruction, but its form of growth was utterly annihilating to human life and existing structures, drawing them into its luminous existence, dissolving them into pure organic energy. They understood that the very act of knowing it, of perceiving it too deeply, put them at risk of being drawn into its impossible existence. The unconventional resolution, a countergrowth of stillness, with this horrifying yet strangely illuminating realization. Malachi, Anya, and Kael understood that the entity couldn't be destroyed or banished in a traditional sense. It could only be contained, or perhaps reoriented, through a profound act of communication it could grasp, a counter-resonance to its alluring song of growth. They devised a perilous, desperate, and deeply unconventional plan, a synthesis of natural philosophy, spiritual understanding, and raw, pragmatic courage. Their goal was to create a spiritual and physical barrier, to make the boundless life force within it listen to a new agreement, to establish a boundary it would respect, a new grammar for their shared existence. It would not be a battle of wills, but a negotiation with the incomprehensible, an attempt to define limits for something limitless by introducing profound stillness and decay. They chose the heart of the most aggressive growth, a vast, open courtyard within the abbey that had been completely consumed, now pulsing with a terrifying, radiant life. Under the pale, watchful light of a waning moon, with only a few of the bravest, most resilient monks and villagers standing vigil at the edge of the now glowing courtyard, their faces etched with fear and hope, Malachi led a ritual unlike any he had ever performed. He wove together ancient alchemical formulae and precise measurements of cold, inert elements, with Anya's primal rhythmic invocations to the spirits of decay and the earth mingling, Christian prayer for divine order with pagan reverence for cycles of death and rebirth. Kael, now bearing a heavy, cold iron chain, purified in deep mountain spring water, represented the unyielding nature of mineral earth, a counterpoint to pure growth. As Malachi chanted his formulae, his voice strong against the rising dread, and Anya swayed, scattering her prepared elements with deliberate motions the unnatural cold light of the verdant tide began to intensify, glowing with a sickly green-gold light pulsating with an inner life. The pervasive hum swelled, a cacophony of alien thoughts and mournful cries, threatening to overwhelm their senses, to pull them into the entity's embrace. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble, and the consumed stone walls groaned and vibrated under an unseen pressure. The essence of the primordial life force was manifesting, attempting to draw them in, to assimilate them, to reform them into pure light and organic matter. But they held firm. Malachi, using a specially prepared retort, carefully released a vapor of chilled, inert gases he had distilled, creating a zone of profound stillness. Anya, scattering crushed mineral dusts and speaking in an ancient, almost forgotten dialect, communicated their intent. We are here. We see you. We acknowledge your presence. We offer you stillness, a place of rest, but no more of ours. You have your growth. We have our form. The cycles are set. Decay, stillness, peace. Kael, with a surge of courage born of desperation, began to lay the heavy iron chain in a precise circle around the most active growth, an unyielding boundary of cold, inert metal. The climax was not a fiery explosion, not a violent confrontation, but a profound, almost silent shift in the very air, a final, intense, soul-crushing pressure, and then a sudden, absolute stillness. The sickly green-gold glow faded, not vanishing, but becoming muted, contained, like a dying ember. The pervasive hum died. The profound silence that remained was no longer terrifying, but merely ... vast. The consumed monks, animals, and villagers were not returned, a heartbreaking, permanent reality that would forever haunt the abbey and the valley. But the consuming force had retreated. The balance had been reset. The bleeding of unbound life had stopped. A changed valley, echoes of the unseen, the Abbey of Saint Gall, and the valley of Ethelgerd, and the souls of its people were forever changed. The immediate terror ceased. The terrifying growth slowed, then stopped, retreating from the abbey walls, leaving behind a scarred landscape where stone and wood were strangely fused with organic matter, now inert and dull. No more strange patterns appeared, no more animals vanished, and the chilling, pervasive hum was never heard again from the depths of the consuming plant. The profound, unsettling cold from the core of the growth retreated. The villagers, though deeply traumatized and bearing the scars of loss, slowly began to rebuild their lives, their bond forged in shared horror and an unspoken understanding of the impossible. Brother Malachi, his scientific mind profoundly expanded and humbled, returned to his studies. But his inquiries now held a new depth, a new reverence for the vast, often terrifying mysteries of God's creation, even those that defied human comprehension or explanation. He kept a small, dull, oddly weighted piece of what was once an iron retort, now fused with the inert plant matter, a quiet, personal reminder of the delicate boundary between the known and the truly alien. Anya, the healer, was no longer merely feared or tolerated. She was revered, her intuitive wisdom undeniable, her unique connection to the ancient energies of the land now fully acknowledged as vital for their continued protection. Young Kael, no longer a skeptic, carried the quiet, indelible understanding of what truly lay beneath the valley's surface, a constant awareness that few others possessed. The transformed parts of the abbey and the valley remained. The central courtyard was now a vast, inert, strange sculpture of fused stone and dull green organic matter, a permanent, silent monument to the unleashed life force. People respected its boundaries, ventured only when absolutely necessary, and always with a quiet reverence, a silent acknowledgement of the ancient, alien presence that slumbered within its deeply transformed core. The scars of the vanishings remained empty cells, missing faces, silent workshops, a poignant, permanent reminder of the immense price paid for their survival and for the terrifying knowledge they gained. The Abbey of Saint Gall became a place on the very edge of the known, a living testament to the unsettling truth that not all things in God's creation, or indeed beyond it, were meant to be understood by human minds. They had touched something truly other, had glimpsed the boundless, terrifying potential of life unbound, and had lived to tell the tale, albeit with a profound and lasting silence woven into the very heart of their valley, a silence that spoke volumes of the incomprehensible. So as you find your own rest tonight, perhaps you can hear the faint strange hum of unbound life. Imagine the eerie beauty of a consuming green glow or picture, a humble abbey living forever on the very edge of the truly inexplicable. Think of the brave souls who, like Brother Malachi, Anya, and Kael, faced not just the known terrors of their age, but something utterly alien, something that transcended even the deepest medieval superstitions and demonic lore. Their chilling story reminds us that even in a world meticulously mapped by faith and tradition, there remained, and perhaps always will remain, vast, terrifying corners of existence that defy understanding, hinting at truths far, far stranger than any legend could ever conceive, and that the greatest discoveries can sometimes unleash the greatest fears. Good night.